You feel it every single day, don't you? That subtle pull in conversations where you walk away knowing you gave too much. That quiet replay at 2 a.m. of the exact sentence someone used to make you doubt yourself, and the slow realization that they knew exactly what they were doing. You see the patterns, you see the masks slipping, you see who is performing kindness to extract something from you. And you say nothing, because saying something would make you the difficult one. You have spent your entire life being the most aware person in every room, and somehow still the most exploited. And here is the part that burns. You were told that your sensitivity was a gift. You were told that being able to read people, to feel what they felt, to understand the layers underneath their words, made you wise. Nobody told you that in a world full of operators, your awareness without armor is just a more interesting target. Nobody told you that empathy without strategy is an open vault with a welcome sign. You did not find this by accident. You found this because some part of you has been quietly preparing for this conversation for years, waiting for someone to finally name the game out loud. So here it is. There is a hidden architecture beneath every human interaction, and 99% of people will live and die without ever seeing it. You will see it before this video ends. "500 years ago, a Florentine diplomat watched princes rise and fall, watched kindness destroyed and ruthlessness rewarded, and wrote down what he saw without flinching. He was exiled for telling the truth. The world has always punished the people who name the mechanics out loud. And yet his observations on human nature, on power dynamics, on the psychological architecture of influence, remain the most accurate map ever drawn of how people actually behave when they think no one is watching. Not how they should behave, how they do. Here is what you were never taught: the emotional reactivity that defines your daily life, the guilt that floods you when someone seems disappointed, the anxious need to explain yourself, the overfunctioning, the overgiving, the over-apologizing. All of it is not a personality. It is a control surface. It is a set of levers, and the people who study dark psychology, whether formally or instinctively, learned long ago exactly which one to pull to move you in any direction they need. Your empathy is a steering wheel they hold. Your conscience is a remote control they operate. And you have been calling this being a good person. Carl Jung understood this differently. He said the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge become the parts that govern your life from underneath. The strategist you suppressed because it felt cold. The sovereign you buried because it felt selfish. The discerning, calculating, observing intelligence you muted because someone once told you it made you unlikable. All of that did not disappear. It went underground. And while it sits in the basement of your psyche, unused, untrained, denied, the people who never suppressed those faculties walk through your life like they own it. Because in a sense, they do. Today you are going to learn the mechanics. You will learn the playbook of psychological manipulation so completely that watching it deployed against you will feel like watching a magician you have already studied. You will learn the stoic emotional control that makes guilt tripping bounce off you like rain on stone. You will learn the Jungian shadow work that closes the back doors others have been walking through your entire life. And by the end, something will have shifted that you will not be able to undo, because awareness of this caliber does not reverse. Once you see the architecture, you cannot unsee it. There is a specific image I want you to hold as we begin. A fortress with no walls. Remember it. We will return to it when you are ready to understand what it actually means. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a sovereign in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. Here is the first thing that changes when you begin to see clearly. You stop asking why people do what they do, and you start asking what they are optimizing for. This is the shift from emotional interpretation to mechanical observation, and it is the foundation of everything that follows. Most people interact with the world as if everyone is operating from the same internal code they are. They assume that beneath every action is a reason that, if only understood, would reveal a fundamentally decent human trying their best. This belief feels generous. It is actually catastrophic, because the people who study power dynamics, who understand Machiavellianism not as a slur, but as a functional toolkit, who have read human nature without sentiment, are not operating from your code. They are operating from theirs, and theirs is built around outcomes, not feelings. Think about the last time someone manipulated you, not the dramatic kind, the small kind, the friend who needed something and timed the request perfectly, right when you were tired and least able to refuse. The colleague who framed their request as a favor to you when it was actually extraction. The family member who made their needs feel like your obligations through 3 sentences of carefully sequenced guilt. You felt it as it happened. There was a flicker, a quiet internal voice that said, "Something is off here." And you overrode it, because overriding it is what you were trained to do. That flicker is your strategic intelligence. That flicker is the part of you that already sees the mechanics. The question is not whether you can perceive manipulation. You already do. The question is what you do in the half second after you perceive it. And right now what you do is suppress it, because the suppressed signal feels less socially expensive than the honored signal. This is the lever. This is what they count on. Machiavelli observed that people are quicker to forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. He was not being cruel, he was being accurate. Underneath the social performance, humans are running calculations constantly, weighing cost against benefit, status against risk, advantage against exposure. The ones who admit this to themselves operate with clarity. The ones who deny it operate at the mercy of those who do not. You have been operating at the mercy of those who do not. And the cure begins with a single internal pivot. You stop interpreting behavior through the lens of what you would have meant if you did the same thing. You start interpreting behavior through the lens of what outcome the behavior is actually producing. Intent becomes irrelevant. Pattern becomes everything. If someone consistently leaves an interaction with more than they came in with, and you consistently leave with less, that is not a friendship having a rough patch. That is a system functioning exactly as designed. The system has a designer, and the designer is not you. Hold that, because in a moment you will see why the cold, calculating awareness most people fear is actually the warmest thing you can offer yourself. But first, there is something darker we have to look at directly. There is a reason psychology has names for these patterns: narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. Together, they form what researchers call the dark triad, and understanding their architecture is not optional anymore. It is hygiene. This is not about diagnosing the people in your life. Diagnosis is a distraction. What matters is the mechanism, because each of these patterns operates through a specific exploit, and once you see the exploit, the spell breaks. The narcissistic operator runs on supply. Their need for admiration, attention, and reflected importance is not a quirk, it is the engine. Every interaction with them is, beneath the surface, a transaction in which they are extracting psychological supply from your willingness to validate, soothe, and prioritize them. The exploit is simple. They make their distress your responsibility. They make their moods your weather. They make their approval the prize you keep reaching for, even though every time you reach, it moves further away. The exploit is moving the goalposts. Your part in the system is the running. The Machiavellian operator, in the clinical sense, runs on advantage. They are not seeking emotional supply, they are seeking position, Every interaction is a chess move evaluated against a long-term board you cannot see because they have not shown it to you. They are charming when charm produces leverage, cold when distance produces leverage, generous when generosity creates obligation, withholding when scarcity inflates value. The exploit is unpredictability. You spend your energy trying to figure out what they want, and that figuring is itself the form your subordination takes. The psychopathic operator, in the trait sense, runs on the absence of friction. They do not feel the brakes that govern your behavior. Guilt does not slow them. Empathy does not soften them. Social shame does not embarrass them. The exploit is that they will say and do things you cannot imagine saying or doing, and the gap between what you can imagine and what they will actually do becomes the territory in which you keep getting blindsided. You keep being shocked. They keep being free. Notice what these three have in common. They all weaponize the brakes that you have, and they do not. Your empathy, your conscience, your social discomfort, your need to think well of yourself, these are not flaws. But they are unguarded entry points, and the dark psychology playbook is built around walking through them. This is what manipulation tactics actually are, mechanically underneath the drama. They are systematic exploitations of the gap between your moral operating system and theirs. Now here is the moment that will be uncomfortable, and I want you to stay with it. Look at your own life. Not at the people who have harmed you, at the moments where you saw the pattern early and stayed anyway. The friendship you knew was extractive in month 3 and remained inside for years. The relationship that revealed itself in the first 6 weeks and that you defended to everyone for the next 6 seasons. The job, the family dynamic, the social circle you saw, you knew, and you stayed. Why? The answer is not weakness. The answer is that part of you was still running the program that says leaving is colder than enduring, that perceiving clearly is meaner than pretending, that naming the mechanic is more shameful than being its victim. This is the program that has to end, and the moment it ends is the moment something that was costing you everything quietly returns to your possession. You will feel it as a kind of stillness you have not felt since childhood. That stillness is your operating system restored. But the architecture is not complete yet, because understanding the predators is only half. The other half is understanding the door you have been leaving open. Carl Jung wrote something that has been quoted so often it has lost its teeth, so I want you to hear it like you are hearing it for the first time. He said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. He was not speaking poetically. He was describing a specific mechanism, and this mechanism is the door through which every successful manipulation in your life has entered. Here is how it works. Inside every person, there are traits, capacities, and impulses that the conditioning of their upbringing taught them were unacceptable. For the betrayed intellectual, the rejected traits are almost always the same set. The capacity to be unmoved by another's disappointment, the capacity to act in self-interest without internal apology, the capacity to be unreadable, the capacity to disappoint someone and let the disappointment exist without rushing to repair it, the capacity to be, in a clean and undramatic way, cold when coldness is the correct response. These capacities were trained out of you early, possibly by a parent who needed you accommodating, possibly by a school system that rewarded compliance, possibly by a culture that monetizes your guilt. The how does not matter as much as the result. You exiled these capacities. You sent them down into what Jung called the shadow, the part of the psyche where the disowned aspects of yourself live in the dark. And here is the trap. The capacities you exile do not stop existing. They simply stop being available to you consciously, which means they cannot be used by you, but they can absolutely be used against you. The manipulator does not need to install new vulnerabilities in you. They only need to detect the existing ones, which are perfectly visible in the form of overreactions. Anything you overreact to is pointing at your shadow like a flare in the sky. The friend who cannot tolerate the thought of being seen as selfish is the friend who can be moved by any accusation of selfishness, no matter how unfounded. The colleague who cannot tolerate being seen as difficult is the colleague who can be steered by the implication that they are being difficult. Your overreactions are the user manual you are unconsciously handing to everyone who knows how to read. This is why two people can hear the same manipulative sentence and have entirely different experiences. The one who has integrated their shadow hears the sentence, registers it as data, and remains unmoved. The one who has not integrated their shadow hears the same sentence and feels their entire nervous system mobilized to disprove it. The sentence had no power. The unintegrated shadow gave it power. The lock was inside you the whole time. Shadow work, in the practical sense, is the process of going down into the basement of your psyche, finding the exiled capacities and bringing them back into conscious ownership, not to deploy them against others, to remove them as exploits against you. When you can consciously access the capacity to disappoint someone, no one can manipulate you with the threat of your disappointing them. When you can consciously access the capacity to be selfish, no one can steer you with the accusation of selfishness. When you can consciously access the capacity to walk away, no one can leverage your fear of being walked away from. You become free, not by becoming harder, but by becoming whole. And this is the part that most people who talk about stoic emotional control miss entirely. The stoic firewall is not built by suppression. Suppression is what built the vulnerability in the first place. The firewall is built by integration. The composed operator is not someone who feels less. They are someone who has stopped exiling the parts of themselves that the manipulator needs in exile in order to function. You came into this video thinking you needed to become cold. You are about to discover that what you actually need is to stop performing the warmth that was never sustainable and access the full temperature range of who you actually are. That is a different transformation than the one you came for. It is the one you needed. Now we install the second layer, because shadow integration closes the doors. The stoic firewall is what governs what passes through them when they are opened by choice. 2,000 years before Machiavelli, a slave named Epictetus and an emperor named Marcus Aurelius arrived at the same insight from opposite ends of the social hierarchy. The insight was this: between every stimulus and your response, there is a space. In that space lives your power. Everything you have ever lost to manipulation, you lost in that space. Everything you will ever recover, you will recover there. The emotional reactivity that has defined your life is, mechanically, a collapse of that space. Someone says a thing, and your reaction happens so fast, it feels like the reaction was the only possible response. It was not. It was a trained response. And anything trained can be retrained. The space can be widened. And when it widens, an entirely new repertoire of responses becomes available to you, including the most powerful response of all, which is no response at all. Here is the stoic discipline, stripped of every motivational quote it has been buried under. You begin to treat your own emotional states as data, not directives. When anger arises, you do not suppress it and you do not act on it. You observe it. You ask what it is reporting. Sometimes anger is reporting a real violation, in which case its report is useful, and a calm, strategic response follows. Sometimes anger is reporting that someone has successfully located one of your unintegrated shadow points and pressed it, in which case the anger is not information about them. It is information about you. The discipline is learning to tell the difference, and the discipline takes time. But the moment it begins, manipulation tactics begin to fail in real time. Picture the specific scenario. Someone deploys a guilt trip against you. The standard sequence runs like this. They say the sentence, your nervous system fires, you feel the heat rise. You begin generating justifications, apologies, defenses, before you have even fully understood what was said. You leave the interaction exhausted, and they leave with whatever they were extracting. Now picture the same scenario with the firewall installed. They say the sentence. You feel the activation begin. You notice it. You let it crest and fall without acting on it. You wait. You respond, if you respond at all, from a place that arrived 3 seconds after the activation, not in the middle of it. Those 3 seconds are the entire game. Those 3 seconds are what makes you impossible to manipulate. The technique is simple to describe and demanding to practice. You begin by interrupting the automaticity. The next time you feel the rise of emotional reactivity in a conversation, you do one thing. You exhale slowly and you say nothing for 2 beats longer than you normally would. That is it. That is the entire first lesson. You will be astonished how often the manipulation collapses in those 2 beats, because the manipulation depended on speed. The manipulation depended on you not having time to think. Time is the firewall. Silence is the firewall. And once you experience the strange new power of withholding your reaction, you will understand why every person who has ever been called intimidating earned that label not through aggression, but through the simple refusal to perform on demand. There is something many people will not tell you about this practice, and you have already earned the right to hear it. Most viewers will not do this work. They will hear it, nod, feel briefly inspired, and return to their reactivity within 48 hours, because the reactivity is what their identity has been built around. The fact that you are still here, still tracking, still integrating, means something specific about you. You are not most viewers. You are the kind of mind this conversation was written for. Something is being built right now, and you may already feel it. There is a quietness arriving where there used to be noise, a small distance between you and the dramas that used to consume you. This is not numbness. This is sovereignty, and it has a structure worth naming. The composed operator moves through the world with 3 faculties working in coordination. The first is observational, the mechanic's eye we built earlier, which sees patterns instead of personalities and tracks outcomes instead of intentions. The second is integrative, the shadow work that has closed the back doors and made you unmovable by accusations that used to detonate your nervous system. The third is strategic, the stoic space between stimulus and response, which converts every interaction from reflex into choice. These 3 faculties together are what Machiavelli was describing when he wrote about the qualities of the prince, not cruelty, coordination. What this looks like in your actual life is something most people will never witness from the inside, so let me show you. You walk into a meeting where someone has prepared, consciously or not, to push your buttons. You feel the first push. The old you would have responded. The current you observes it, recognizes the pattern, locates the lever they are pulling, and notices, with something close to amusement, that the lever is no longer connected to anything. You respond evenly, briefly, and without the explanatory excess that used to flood your speech. You leave the meeting with your energy intact. Someone else in the room registers that something has changed about you, but they cannot name it. You can. You see your phone light up with a message designed to draw a reaction. The old you would have felt the heat, drafted 3 responses, deleted them, drafted a 4th, sent it, and spent the next hour relitigating it internally. The current you reads the message, identifies its purpose, sets the phone down, and addresses it on your timing, not theirs. You have just done something most people cannot do. You have refused to be steered. You sit at dinner with someone who used to be able to reorganize your entire emotional state with a single sentence. They deploy the sentence, it arrives, you feel it land somewhere distantly, like hearing thunder from another county. You finish your meal, you go home. The sentence does not follow you. You do not replay it at midnight. The lock is gone because the door is gone. The door is gone because the shadow it opened into has been brought up into the light and integrated into your conscious self. Now look back at the image I asked you to hold at the start. A fortress with no walls. It seemed paradoxical then. Hear it now. The fortress is not what protects you from the outside world. The fortress is the state of being so completely at home in your own psyche that nothing from the outside can dislodge you. The walls are unnecessary because there is nothing left inside to attack. The shadow has been integrated, so accusations have nothing to land on. The reactivity has been governed, so provocations have nothing to ignite. The mechanic's eye has been opened, so manipulation tactics arrive already disarmed, recognized for what they are, before they finish their sentence. You are not fortified against the world. You are simply no longer available as material for it to work with. This is what Machiavelli was pointing at when he wrote of the prince who is feared without being hated. It was never about being cruel. It was about being unconquerable in a way that does not require performance. The composed operator is feared in the original sense of the word, which is respected, taken seriously, not approached with the careless extractive energy that the soft target invites. And they are not hated because they are not engaged in the petty cruelties that hatred attaches to. They are simply, quietly, structurally unavailable to be moved by anyone who has not earned the right to move them. That is the position you're walking into now. There is one more thing to see before we close, and it is the recontextualization that makes everything you have learned today resolve into something you did not expect. You were never trying to become cold. You were trying to come home. The coldness you fantasized about was a projection of how far you had wandered from yourself. The strategic detachment that drew you to this video was not a desire to harden. It was the soul's recognition that the version of warmth you had been performing was killing you, and that something more honest, more whole, more sovereign was waiting underneath. You do not need to become a different person. You need to stop being the diminished version of the person you already are. The cold, calculating, untouchable strategist is not a mask you put on. It is the face underneath the mask you have been wearing. You are not building a new self. You are excavating the original one. And here is what others will experience as this becomes who you are. They will feel the change before they understand it. The ones who fed on your reactivity will drift, confused, unable to articulate what they have lost access to. The ones who respected you from a careful distance will move closer, sensing that something in you has stabilized. New people will arrive in your life who could not have located you in your previous configuration because their frequency required this version of you to receive it. You will speak less and be heard more. You will explain less and be understood more. You will defend less and be challenged less because the energy that invited the challenges has dissolved. The world organizes itself around the signal you actually transmit. You are about to transmit a different signal. Become the one in the room who cannot be steered. Become the one in the conversation who cannot be baited. Become the one in your own life who cannot be made small by anyone, including the version of yourself who used to do it for them. If something in you has shifted while watching this, drop the word sovereign in the comments. Not as a declaration to me, as a declaration to yourself, a small piece of evidence on the record that this is the moment you stopped being available to be used. And subscribe, because what we explore here is not content. It is initiation. There is a specific lineage of mind this channel is built for, and if you have read this far, that lineage includes you. The next videos in this sequence go deeper into the architecture, into the shadow, into the strategic disciplines that complete what we began today, and you will want to be there when they arrive. And whatever you do, do not stop now. The video on screen continues exactly where this one ended. Trust me, it is the next door, and it opens on the other side of everything you just understood. I will see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.